Hello and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I am here today with the beautiful Becca Gardner, who has a business called The Missing Piece. Piece as in om. That's the word that comes to my mind. Um, and I've just been on Becca's podcast, The Thought Trap, and we had an amazing conversation, which is actually out today, which obviously won't be out today when you're listening to this, but you might want to go and find it if you like this conversation. Um, and it was such fun that I said to Becca, right, I want you back. I want to have another conversation because it was kind of, me being on your podcast meant that the questions were kind of directed to me, but I want it to flip over to you. So I wanted to hear your story. Because we kind of, I think we sort of started our journey in a similar place, possibly. You can correct me on this, but um, Nicola Bird from A Little Peace of Mind was a big part of the sort of start of our journey into seeing life differently, I guess. Um, and so I'm assuming your story starts with some anxiety. Because
Yes.
that's how most of us found our way to Nicola, even if, like me, I had no idea I was anxious, but that's another story. Um, so yeah, I'd love to hear, Becca. I'd love to hear, what was it that brought you? Because you've now trained as a change coach
Mhm.
with Amy Johnson. So obviously there's been some change in your life
Yeah.
that you now share with others, and so I'd love you to just tell me and my listeners like what's your what's your story, where did it start, and kind of where's it headed to?
Take you down memory lane, hey?
Exactly.
Well, thank you for having me in this space. I feel like I'm in the hot seat because it only feels like yesterday that you were here and
Yeah.
I was I was interviewing you, or not really interviewing, but
Ah.
having some chatter. And
Indeed.
I was so chuffed that you wanted me on your podcast because, to be honest, I wanted to carry on the conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Me
Um,
too.
And so those that are listening, you need to almost listen to that one too, because it's like a continuation. I'm going to try
Yes.
and be really fresh. So absolutely, my journey did start with Nicola Bird. I
Mm,
think I was Googling anxiety, because I think many professionals, so to speak, had said, you definitely have anxiety.
mm.
I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder formerly,
Okay.
and possibly panic disorder. I think that was thrown in at some point. Um, and at the time, I was just simply looking for an answer because
Mm,
I didn't feel like myself. I'd worried for many, many years, probably from the age of about 4, I always say. Um, and I think it just got to a point around about, and I'm just trying to cast my mind, it was in my 30s where it just started to feel like it was becoming more of my experience.
yeah.
And this was a point that I was like, I don't I don't need to live like this. Surely there must be a solution. So I had a lot of seeking, I had a seeking energy to get an
Mm,
answer.
mm,
I wasn't happy with just worrying all the time. It felt like my mind was constantly whirling
mm,
24/7.
mm.
And for me, I had a lot of physical symptoms too, which remind me if I don't share that at some point. But
Mm.
yes, I Googled anxiety and Nicola Bird came up. It was an audio that from our
Yeah.
conversation on my podcast, it was clear that we listened to the same audio,
Yeah.
which was just so straightforward. It was a personal story around how she had struggled. And I was, for the first time, like yourself, Vicky, I was like, wow, that's exactly me.
Yeah.
And I read her book and I did her program at the time. I think she was running a course, if I
Mm,
can remember. And from that point, I just realized there was something that was being shared that resonated.
mm.
And as you know, it was very different to all the typical modalities that were out there that were very prescriptive, that I had to do certain things. You
Mm.
know, I was hypnotized. I did, at one point, I'm pretty sure I had to tap my shoulder when I had a negative thought come in and then reframe it with a positive one. I did a lot of CBT
Yeah.
privately and through the NHS. Um, I did some Reiki. You name it, I did it. Like, I think
Yeah.
I probably did too much because didn't allow anything to settle.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was no coincidence that I found what we share
Mm.
now with our clients and our audiences. It was no coincidence that I found that at the point that I did because I'd realized that using a lot of effort was just more exhausting.
Yeah.
And so there was just a seeing of something different. There was a feeling of something different. And in those early days, I still felt anxious,
Hmm.
but there was something pulling me into the conversation that just, it's so hard to describe. I know you know what that feels like. It was just like, and there is a gazillion things I could have done to support my anxiety, but they didn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
Once I really began to see that my thinking was creating my experience and I was
Mm.
feeling my thinking.
Mm.
It just started this whole journey that I'm on and still on. And so I came across Dr. Amy Johnson in the Little School of Big Change and had a significant impact with her work too.
Mm. Mm.
And I was like, I need to share this. My background before I came into coaching was working in financial services. And so I was a financial advisor. I worked with numbers. I worked in big businesses.
Mhm.
And I just knew it wasn't me. And
Mhm.
when I had my children, I felt more anxious than ever. I spent so much time at home, so my mind was super busy. So all those familiar patterns of worry just seemed to spiral. And so my journey for a solution, so to speak, with this anxiety that it looked like I was struggling with, ended up being a complete shift in everything that I do. And I'd been impacted so much, it made sense for me to share it. And at that point, I was like, this was always what I was supposed to do because I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. And I know you resonate with that.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And it's so funny when you were saying that you didn't really know why you were being drawn into it, because I can remember when you said that, like a memory flashed into my mind of wrapping presents for Christmas. And I was like, locked away in our bedroom wrapping these presents. And I think it was probably Nicola's podcast because there were a lot of episodes at that point, which I think are now all available on YouTube. Um, and I remember listening to it, and I had no idea really what she was talking about. It was just like, what, what, what? But the next one would start, and I wouldn't stop it. It was like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll just listen to this one. And there
Mhm.
was this kind of like pull, like you said, to just. It's like I always liken it to. It's that whole thing of when you hear something that's true, it resonates somewhere beyond the intellect. It's like there's something in this. I can't understand it intellectually. I don't understand what she's sharing particularly, but I need to keep listening. And it's just like that deeper knowing is kind of activated in some way.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put because I think it does really feel like that. It feels like a pull.
Mm.
And I think because what you're listening to is words, it's really tricky at first, I think. I'd be interested what comes up for you where when you share that with somebody that's not come across this, it's like, what do you mean I don't have to listen and apply it, so to speak? But if it was, I don't know, a podcast with just a very low vibration and you were like, oh, whenever I listen to this, it feels really good and I just feel better, it would sort of make more sense. But because there's words, we are so conditioned in society to listen and apply. Listen and apply. And I'm going, listen and don't apply. It's almost like it sounds bonkers.
Yeah.
it sounds like some kind of woo-woo magic conversation. And maybe it is because I know that that's what I did in those early days. I just listened with no agenda. And I cleaned my house a lot during that time because I was told that if I listen without too much, like, what's the
Attention.
word? Yeah, attention, then it would do its magic. It would do its thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it did.
It does sound like woo woo, doesn't it? Like for anyone listening to this that hasn't listened to any of my previous podcasts or anything that I do now or any of your podcasts, they might be thinking, the hell are these two on about? Like I've literally no idea. And you alluded to something which I think I presume was quite a big thing for you, which was what you think is felt.
Hmm.
Like whenever attention is on thought, that thought gets felt within the system. And I'm wondering, was that the sort of key switch, if you like? Because I think we talked about the thing that made me sit up and go, "What? what?" I'm just really would love to know, like, what, if you can put it into words, was there something that just made the penny drop, if you like?
I think there was. I think there's a number of things. It wasn't just this one particular
Mm.
event, but there was something in particular that I don't think I've actually talked about. And I think it'd be so interesting for people to listen. But I had some excruciating pain in my mouth, and it was it was after I had a tooth out. And when I had this, they found they found almost just like a very simple filling. And then I went back and said it's still really sensitive. And they did some investigations, but they couldn't find anything. And so in the end, they did some root canal because I was in so much pain. And again, it didn't solve the pain, but the pain was coming and going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever experienced toothache, but if something is going to hurt in your tooth, it doesn't sort of come and go necessarily. Like if it's really bad, it tends
Right.
to, especially if it's an infection, it will just stay because it needs your attention, it needs
Yeah.
attention. So I went on this like journey with this pain in my tooth. And in the end, I had the tooth out because it was such a problem. It was such a healthy tooth and there was still nothing wrong. And at this time, I was like, well, it must have been the tooth. It must have been this. And I my mind created a story, which at the time obviously didn't feel like a story, that I had some nerve damage of some kind. Because what happened was all around the right hand side of my mouth, I was just in excruciating pain. It was like a type of neuralgia that over the counter painkillers couldn't touch. And then I started getting prescription nerve medication to help me. And it was a really, really hard time. I had two young children. Um, and anybody that's had any type of acute pain like that knows how hard it is.
Mm.
But there was times that it would just ease. There was times it would almost disappear and I'd be like, oh, it's gone. And then it'd come back again. And so I had an MRI scan on my
Mm.
head and all around that area. And that in itself was a very, very anxious time. Because guess what? My mind um, just thought there was something really, really bad,
Yeah.
really bad going on. So what it did, and it just did what it did best. It created some really compelling stories. And that was feeding into that cycle of anxiety. Because it didn't know, I didn't know until I got the results. So there was this really like uncomfortable time, and they found nothing, absolutely nothing, which sounds comforting on some level, but I still had all this pain. So then something
Wow.
must be really wrong. Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is going on here?
Yeah.
So
Oh man.
honestly, like, I thought I'd have to live with it for the rest of my life. And at the time, I was aware of what we share, but it looked like it was something different to that. It really did, because how could thinking and be anything to do with this? This was a physical nerve problem. And to cut a long story short, I ended up seeing an osteopath who gave me a massage in my jaw and released some tension. It simply was muscle tension from me holding my worry, from it just, having so much work up there. But it was predominantly the fact that I was so anxious about it. I was holding my body, and it was like the pain went overnight.
Wow.
And I realized that yes, there would have been tension in my body, and that wasn't my fault. And, we build up tension as humans, but my thinking had such a huge impact in my whole experience of all of it. And so, alongside that, I suffered with a lot of back pain. I saw chiropractor after chiropractor, and I really thought it was down to the fact that I didn't have a very strong core. And I occasionally do a bit of Pilates now, but I'll be honest, I don't do it anywhere near as much as I should, if at all. And I, touch wood, don't really have back pain ever now, because my whole system is no longer activated in that fight and flight. And that whole body mind system is so correlated. And I
Mm.
had no idea. And so, and it was something you said on my podcast that, yes, we're feeling our thinking, but at times there is just feeling in the body that the mind then tries to interpret. And it's all a big, big fat loop. That is like a massive loop.
Yeah.
And seeing that changes something, because you're no longer in the loop trying to manage the loop. You're seeing the loop play out. And whilst there might still be suffering, I guess there's a detachment from that, and from the when there's a detachment from anything, there's some space that's created. And then that space is where I invite my clients, myself, my family,
Mm.
anybody that's kind of in my world, to look towards, because from that space anything's possible.
Yeah. I just think that's such an amazing thing to share, because it's so it's so familiar to people to have something like there's a physical thing going on in the body. And, neither of us are denying that there are physical things that happen to a body. There's a body, and like a house, it's subject to, I don't know, degradation, if you want of a better word. Um, but the mind has such a huge role in it. So I work a lot with people with health anxiety, interestingly. I think since COVID, it's really become a massive thing, not surprisingly. And it seems to me that exactly what you're talking about, there's some issue, like there was something going on with the tooth, and then the mind gets involved in making it something it's not,
Yeah.
innocently, just because that's, for whatever reason, what you've been conditioned into doing. Like your mind's learnt this way of operating, if you like. And I just think it is entirely fascinating how that then, the mind gets involved, or there's something really wrong. There must be something really, really wrong. And then we go into that, of
Hmm.
course, then, oh, well, I need to explore this, and I need to go to this place, and I need to go to this doctor, and I need to, whatever. And we're not saying don't go to a doctor, of course not. But it's just being, there's something about, like you say, that the stepping out for a moment just to see, like, hang on a minute, what is known here? There's a pain, that's it. And then on top of that is the thing that's driving, everything, which is the story about what the pain means, which is
And that's
unknown.
it is, and that's a huge part of the suffering. And like you say, it's
Yeah.
not creating the whole thing. Um, but what comes to mind, because I really like food, is a trifle. Like, you've got the bottom of the trifle with, the cake and the jelly, but then you've got the blancmange and the cream and all the sprinkly bits. They're all the nonsense and the stories that come on top.
Mm.
Like, there is a sensation in the body, but people don't realize how much of an impact thinking can add to an already
Mm.
hard situation. And that's what was happening with me with everything. So
Yeah.
even now, my back and my jaw can be a bit achy.
Mm.
but it almost doesn't, what's the word that's coming to mind? No words coming to mind. It doesn't then just blow up into this huge,
No.
like, drama. Like, I
Right. And
lived
that's
in
it.
drama, Vicky.
Yes. Well, that's it, isn't it? Most of us do when we don't know that there's another way. The mind is constantly creating some form
Yeah.
of drama.
That drama brought me into this conversation, though. So
Yeah.
um, I'm very grateful for my dramatic
Yeah.
aid because I'm like, yes. But I was just, I've got so much compassion for that part of me that was just, I would drive myself to the doctor's surgery
Yeah.
and sit in the car park and wait for them to open because I needed them to sort me and to fix me
Yeah.
in every angle, whether that was physical pain, that was emotional pain. And I didn't know the difference between the two. It all just looked like a big broken mess.
Yeah. And it was in a sense it was, wasn't it, at that
Yeah.
point? There was no way of seeing, and that's I think that's the thing if you're listening to this and you're recognizing something in you on this, there's no blame. It's like that's just going to happen until there's a different thought that says maybe I don't need to pay attention to all this thinking. Maybe there's nothing wrong. What if I'm okay?
Mm.
What about just being with what is and noticing what that is without the stories, because yes, there's pain. Okay, like you say, there's a stiff jaw and maybe a sore back. Like when
Mhm.
we just stay with that, there's there's no struggle or suffering in there, and we're resourced to kind of go, okay, well, what makes sense then? What steps shall I take given that I've got a sore back or a sore jaw?
And I think what is a really big telling sign, which could be useful for those that are really hearing themselves in what we're sharing, is the urgency. Like
Yes.
it comes like when we know what to do in a situation, it comes from a more of a just an action taken.
Yeah.
When it comes from, oh, should I do this, should I do that, if it's got that kind of like movement, it's like, right, that's interesting. What's going on here? It's just a lot of noise. And that's not to say that you don't go and seek professional help, but it's just coming from that calmer space. Because I 100% still go and see a doctor over
Totally.
this. And but it's just from a lot more alignment, if that makes sense. I can see the difference between that and the right, I need to just go and do this.
Mm, mm,
And I think that's what's the difference between knowing or instinct and
yeah.
a mind that is doing its job, designed to keep us safe and constantly coming up with solutions.
Yeah. And always coming from fear, essentially. Like, the mind is constantly, by its very nature, is fear based. Like
Yeah.
you say, it's looking out for problems when there probably aren't any. Um, so you had this experience with your tooth. Was that one of the key, like you obviously kind of you saw something in that, um, which interested you more, I guess, in what we're sharing. Were there any other, moments when you kind of that stopped you, I guess, in your tracks, stopped you from engaging in that mind narrative, or helped you to see that, what was really going on was that there was a mind that was just doing its thing, but it was being believed, if you like.
Yeah, I think that was like the foundational point of all of this.
Mm,
But then my journey kind of took a different turn and I started to really be quite open to the fact that it wasn't all on me.
mm,
Like I think there was a responsibility piece that I'd inherited, not from anybody in particular, just from society, I think,
yeah.
that I needed to be there for so many different things, like people and I just started to explore in the direction that what if it isn't all on me? Like if we don't need to rely on a narrative or mind, and even in the early days, they were pointing to something so much bigger than us that we could rely on. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe more so with my journey with Dr. Amy Johnson, where I could see my mind for what it was. I could really honestly, in real time, feel my thinking. But that only felt like it took me part of a way. Like
Yes.
it took me to the airport. But I wanted to get on the plane and I wanted to travel more. So that changed a huge amount. Like, but there was still this sense of heaviness that I
Mm.
needed to still like be there for people, like in a way that was almost at a detriment to my own health. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is exhausting. You've got to, I had this feeling I wanted everyone to be okay all the time.
Oh yeah.
It never occurred to me that everybody's okay, like no matter what, like even if they fuck things up, that's how they learn. We're all on our own path. And I think that changed a lot for me because I could see that I was on my own path, but the loved ones around me, they're on their own path too. And so I started really being curious about what is truly out there that we can rely on, and what if we aren't in control as much as we think we are. And so I had a bit of a journey and still continue in non-duality, really.
Mm.
Um, and in simple terms, just seeing that life is unfolding moment to moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whether we have a choice or whether we don't have a choice, we don't really know that. And I think at some level, choices are made. And I don't think Becca Gardner, is involved to the degree that I think I was. And that managed to, and that in itself, I was like, maybe I'm more of a passenger on the aeroplane rather than driving the aeroplane. And I don't say that in a way that, oh God, well, what we're just sitting back and letting life unfold, and therefore, what's the point?
Mm.
It's more than that. It's like it's wordless, but I try very hard to talk about it and find that only fucks it up, really.
I love it. I love it. And oh my goodness, this is a dangerous path that you've led me down, the choice path, the no chooser, no doer conversation, which I just love. It is, as you pointed out, the thought aspect is brilliant, and it's a great starting point when if you can start to explore thoughts, what thoughts are, where they come from, whether you create them or not, like all, that whole thing, and do you feel them? That's a super helpful path to explore if for anybody. And that was for sure the starting point for me as well. And as you rightly pointed out, there's something, you can explore that. And then there's this beautiful other or add-on, if you like, or whole area to explore when that's kind of been experimented with, which is, what are we? Really? Like, what are we? And are we what we think we are?
Yeah, and I think the thought feeling foundational point, which I guess I call it, like the
Mm,
foundations, like
mm,
that stuff, this stuff should be in curriculums at school.
mm,
And things would be just like the impact of just seeing that alone and not exploring
huge.
anymore is profound. But like you, Vicky, I love to explore, and um if we know we're not our thoughts and feelings, then what the heck are we?
Mm,
Because I spent so much time in that place of knowing what we're not. And so it made complete sense to me to explore, well, if I'm not those things, what am I?
mm,
And it is a felt sense. It's almost
yeah.
like in your book with your experiments, like
Mm,
it's an exploratory path. I invite my clients to peep. And peeping is, as you know, looking, and it's simply play, explore, experiment, and play. And it's simply to have a look at your own life, like what is going on,
yeah.
and question it. not even directly outwards, question it with yourself.
Mm.
And I'm spending so much time just looking at birds and listening to birds at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this? Like, it's just, I'm just so grateful that I've been able to um, have so much time in my head. Because if I hadn't, then I wouldn't be seeing what I'm seeing now. I was,
Mm.
because it just doesn't look to me that attention needs to go on the head as much. And at times it
No.
does.
Yeah.
It's usually because I'm tired.
Yeah. Or it's because you've got something that you want to plan. Like it's super useful, isn't it, to have this thinking thing, to have this mind that we can plan a holiday or plan what we're going to eat and do the shopping and write
Mm.
lists and brilliant. It's absolutely amazing.
But it's really good to know at what point that has its limits.
Exactly.
Like, so when you said plan, I'm like straight away, I was thinking, yeah, plan, but old Becca plans and thinks and works and scenarios. So plan a holiday, boom, door closed.
Yeah,
Not the what will happen when I get there? What if this
exactly.
happens? What if someone,
Exactly.
what if this? Do, 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 do. If any
Totally.
of the thinking, as you know, comes down the route of ifs and buts and buttercups, you're only in a story.
Yeah, yeah. And that's great to recognize, isn't it?
Huge.
So, like, just staying with practical, the mind is an amazing practical tool.
Hmm.
How do I get from here to Alicante Airport? Right. Well, let's do some research. Let's find that out. But yeah, what would it mean if I didn't get to Alicante Airport? How am I? How like just all of the like you say the. Well, what if I don't make it? What if something happens when I'm on the flight? What if which is the land that we both lived in?
Yeah.
That's not. You can tell from the feeling, can't you?
100%. And I have a friend that recently went on a holiday and she broke down on the side of the motorway. Now, if you'd have said to her, what are you going to do if you break
Yes.
down tomorrow on the side of the motorway? You wouldn't sleep, would you? You'd be
No.
all over the place. You'd be like, oh my God, I've got to get a flight. But do you know what? It all was fine. She
Yeah.
ended, and she was on a hard shoulder with her young children. An Uber picked her up, believe it or not, on the side of the hard shoulder. Didn't even think that was possible. Like you couldn't, can you imagine how
Mm.
much our minds would have gone and ran with that if they knew that information? Because
Yeah.
like you said so beautifully on my podcast, which is why everybody needs to listen to that too, is that we just know what to do in the bloody moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was talking to my membership group yesterday about this as well, because it occurred to me, like COVID was such a great example of that exact thing. Like if we'd all been told, even a week before, but let's say a year before, that we're going to be locked in our houses and we won't be allowed out, we won't be able to work, we won't be able to go to the supermarket, we'll have to queue up to go to the supermarket, we'll have to wear a thing over our face and our nose. If we'd been told all of that, like I would say half of the population would have just had a total like flip out, probably more than that, like including me. If we knew what was going to happen in a month's time, our minds would be like some kind of rampaging elephant. Like just the destruction that would be created. But actually, what happened in COVID, we had no idea that was going to happen. And yes, it was a horrible experience for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Not my personal experience, thankfully. But, everyone kind of made their own way through it.
Absolutely. And I think that something that always comes up for me is memories and how we remember that at that time is only, we're recalling the memory from the thoughts we're having in this moment and depending on how we're feeling. Because on the weekend, we sat down and looked at some old photos of when
Mm.
the kids were little, and it was all in COVID.
Mm.
I had a great tan. I was homeschooling the kids and they looked happy. Like, I spent so much time at home. My husband was working at the time, but if you'd have asked me on a bad day what was COVID like, oh, it was awful, like but actually looking at the photos, there were some good times too. And so I think it's just so interesting how experience works and how we remember stuff and how we work as human beings. And I think knowing all of that, how this system, this body mind system operates, can be I'm going to say so useful. That just doesn't sound enough.
No,
It's bloody brilliant. It's life changing.
totally.
Should be
Yeah.
like, should be heading the world. We should be heading the world, Vicky.
Yes.
Me and you.
Let's go do
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And I would love to take you back then just a little bit because I think we might have skipped over it a little bit. Um, I'd love to hear you talk more about the no chooser thing. Like, what do you see about that? And you mentioned about looking at nature and looking at the birds, and I personally find that incredibly helpful because we can kind of see in nature, and there's obviously we're all drawn to nature, and I don't think there's an accident. There's no accident in that because nature has so much to reflect, to show
Mhm.
us, if you like. So I'd love to hear more about what you see around that kind of, the human being that thinks it's choosing, controlling, and making things happen, and the bird, is that controlling, deciding, making things happen, or is it just, following the rules of life for the bird? I just love for you to sort of talk a bit
Oh,
more about that because I love
yeah.
it.
Well, a mind or mine especially would want an absolute answer here.
Mm.
I'm not very happy with a floaty answer. But I'll tell you how it looks to me, and that's all how it looks to me, is that I don't know, right? I don't know if we've got a choice or not. But how it looked to me before is that it was all on me and I had a
Mm.
choice. And if I didn't make the right
The
choice,
right
that
one.
that could
Yeah.
have a really bad consequence on someone and then that could impact their future and blah, honestly, the drama, like,
Yes.
couldn't even
Yes.
begin
Yes.
to go in. I mean, that'd be an episode in its own right.
Yeah.
But I think what has happened is I can see how not connected we are to nature, how we are nature. Well, we're no
Mm.
different to the
Mm.
birds, apart from we've got this gift of thought that is running the show. And I can see quite clearly that we can have a pull to do something and then a mind that talks us out of it.
Totally.
I can quite easily see that when thinking gets out the way, we know what to do. I think we are 100% without doubt how I see it, and I'd love people to just look for themselves, peep for themselves, but that we have an inner guidance that when we really see the mind for what it is, then we can hear it more.
Mm.
And so I think there is literally just what is. And it can never ever be any different to what is. I just think that there is so many different variables that goes into something that happens at any time that it's not that we need to accept whether it would have happened there or anything. It is what it is. And by the time we've even accepted it, even if that's a thing, then that moment's passed. And so my mind wants to know if there's a choice or not. I'm not going to lie. And I explore in that a lot. And I hear lots of even new things coming out, how we can potentially make an impact if we focus and if we, I don't know, have the words just completely disappeared out of my mind. Manifest,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know.
No.
Maybe on some level, when we are deeply connected, deeper, then maybe that's a possibility. But that
Mm.
isn't my experience. What I know is that I feel like I am almost watching all of this play out, and sometimes I'm
Mm.
not.
Mm.
It really looks like there's a choice of whether I pick my glass up and have a drink now or not. If I had to put money on it, I would say it doesn't look like I really do have a choice. I just have a mind that's narrating it as I go.
Mm. And
Like,
I think what's interesting is that science can back that up now. So I don't
yeah,
know whether we talked about it on your podcast, but
no,
what
I
I
don't think
find
we
really
did.
interesting is like they have done studies where, you know, somebody reaches for their drink and they're like, yeah, I just chose to have a drink. But like seconds before that, the body was already moving to pick
Mm,
up the drink. So it's
yes.
like what you just said. There's the movement, and then there's the mind that jumps on the movement and says, I did it. I just
Yeah.
reach for my drink.
Yeah. That to me
I,
looks more true than anything.
it's just so fascinating.
It looks like I use the example of a football match. So my family are quite into football
Mm.
and listen to it, watch it on the television, and the commentator is talking about where the ball's gone after the ball's gone where it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, bearing in mind
Yeah.
I don't last a full 90, but I get the gist.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you, I mean, if you go to a match, there isn't a commentator. You
Yeah.
can use with your own eyes what's
Yeah.
going on. So to me, it looks like the narrative is an overlay to what's
Exactly.
unfolding in life.
Yeah.
Not because I've read it in a book, because I've looked to my own life and I can see it can't be anything other than that.
Yeah.
When things happen, which they do, you know, where things like unplanned happen and I'm in the car taking somebody somewhere because that was the right thing to do, there's absence of thought. If I'm driving my car and a deer runs out, I'm braking. I'm not thinking, shall I brake? There is
Yeah.
just a braking that's happening.
Yeah.
So, from my experience and my looking, that's exactly how it looks. Does that mean we have no control at all? Who knows? But I know it's a really bloody fascinating
It's
conversation, and there's something felt within all of it that keeps me pulled there.
and I think what's really interesting is just that sort of the possibility that the system's always learning. So you mentioned like the whole sort of law of attraction manifesting thing, and like who knows, but if you read a book or you listen to something about it and then you start playing around, did you do that? Or like if you go back to the very first step, like how did the book get read? Like who did did you seek it out, or did it just cross your awareness? Did someone mention it to you? Like did you do that, and then did you kind of go, oh, i'm I'm making a choice to read that, but or were you just, did you find yourself drawn to it? Oh, that looks interesting. Well, who decided it was interesting? Do you know what I mean? It's like when you actually kind of drill down, you start to see that there's just a movement. And then if you start playing around with law of attraction, well, who's choosing to do that? Is it just that you're interested? There's an interest there,
Yeah.
and it starts to be played around with.
And I think it's really useful you share that because the mind wants to be in control. So it's always
Yeah,
going to give a very compelling, evident story that it
yeah,
was in control, which is why it all becomes so grey. But there has been, 45 years of my life. I can honestly look back and see that I was always where I was going to be. Like, even when I met my husband, I was at a party at the same time as him. He was in the kitchen and I was in the lounge. We never met that night. But the coincidences, because that's what we like to call it in humans, don't we? It's a coincidence.
yeah,
I don't think it is. It is exactly how it was always going to be.
yeah,
And I think I would never want anybody to adopt that as a belief because it doesn't even feel like a belief to me, which is why I always come from
no,
a place I just don't know.
yes,
But my mind wants to know. But like you share, like anything is possible when we're less identified with a certain way of being, or I don't know, that isn't perhaps the way you say it, but that's the feeling I get. Like anything is possible. It's
mm,
everybody that's listening, you can do anything
yeah,
beyond what your mind's saying.
and that's it. But mostly we don't recognize the mind's role in stopping that,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it's invisible. Like it's just obvious. Like I'm not the kind of person who does X, Y, and Z. It's so invisible. It's like that's not a thought, it's just a fact. Like I don't do those things. I couldn't do those things. They're just not within my, but without that thought, then who knows? And
Yeah,
that's the kind of fun game, isn't it? Of just like just all of it, all everything is up for grabs. Everything that we think is true and factual and absolute.
yeah,
And when we start to explore, we get to see that, oh, well, that person, if you talk to someone else, they don't see that those things are true and absolute. And they might be things about yourself that you're like, well, I'm one eye's bigger than the other, and well, my nose is too small, or my head's too big, or like, but you ask someone else and they're like, what are you talking about? I don't know, I don't even see that. So it's like, just
It's
it's
so
all love.
freeing though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so freeing to start. This all starts like dissolving when we really
Mm,
begin to see actually we're all living from our own complete realities, depending on what we're thinking and feeling, our conditioning, which means that, the wall behind you, the color and how I see it and that picture, all the meaning of all of that is just created from my mind. That's really fucking amazing. And that's why I love this work. And it
yeah.
doesn't even feel like work. It's just everything. But like you, I'm so passionate because I know how impactful this can have on people
Mm,
that it excites me every single day.
mm. I know, and what I guess, the exploration that we've just had is like a scratch on the surface, isn't it? I mean, if anyone's kind of interested to explore further, then just follow where you're taken next. Is what That's what I always say to people. It's like, what, just let there'll be show notes underneath this. If you find yourself being drawn to watching, going to Becca's website, or watching, listening to a podcast, whatever. It's like, it's just, I think it's just amazing that, like, we don't it doesn't need to be hard. We don't have to be the one that's driving it, or we can, like we're trying to point to, like, there's life. Life is is doing the stuff, if you like, and
It
life
is,
knows.
yeah, it's a movement. I love that. I use that too. And it's something that comes to mind for me as well is, oh, see, it's gone now. It literally was there, and I was just like, that was it. If there's just some intelligence behind something, like if
Mm,
you plan to do something and then it was cancelled or whatever, from a human level, you're allowed to be disappointed. It's
mm,
so important that we acknowledge and we feel into whatever is arising in any moment. And there's some beautiful intelligence there. The fact that whatever you were going to do didn't go ahead is exactly how it was going to be. And there's
mm,
a bigger intelligence at play. And oh
mm,
my God, I see this all the time. And because I've just got a very inquisitive disposition now more than ever, where I'm just going, oh my gosh, that didn't happen, and then that happened, and I'm just like, it's all just exactly how it's going to be. And that's with all the hard shit as well. It's not that
yes, yes, yeah,
it
yeah, yeah,
goes that way because that's what makes it more joyful. We're not here just to feel joy, we're
no.
here to feel all of the feels.
And I think, what you've pointed on maybe is a great place to end, because it again, it came up in a lot of conversations for me yesterday, and it's constantly kind of at the forefront of my mind, that this is the simplest thing in the world, in that, when we start to realize that what is just is, that whatever is happening right now is just happening right now, and there's no resistance to it, there's no suffering. And it's really as straightforward as that. The moment that we get into the thinking that says it shouldn't be this way, it needs to be different, I need to be different, whatever, it needs to be different, there's the resistance to what's happening right now, and there's the suffering. And that just, if if you can take even a fraction of that, just to see that, because we the moment there's that hands off the steering wheel, if you like, okay, so this is happening, it's not it just doesn't stick around. It's like, it's through. So it could be anxiety, it could be toothache, it could be whatever. It's like, okay, so this is here, but we know, all of us know innately, that nothing stays the same ever. And if you don't know that, look look at your day, like look at your body, look at look at your thoughts, look at your feelings, look at your emotions. Like nothing stays. However hard, like if you're really happy and you want to hold on to that, can you? Nothing stays. Not one cell in the body is the same as it was when we were born. Like nothing is the same. And that's the one thing that we can know, I guess, that things are always changing. And there's something that can be scary to a mind in that. But when you see that, what the flip side of that means, that nothing can, like, even the most awful experiences, the most awful emotions, the most horrible feelings
Mhm.
cannot stay.
And I think just having that understanding, as simple as that, can have such a huge impact because if you're going through a really hard time, it feels when you're in that sort of experience, because I've been there, you think it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And there is that just moment reminder that it will move and you're okay no matter what you're
Yeah.
experiencing. And you'll know what to do in the moment, not ahead of time.
Mm.
And all of that, even as we're talking about this, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is not obvious
No.
for so many people. So
No.
whether we have a choice, whether we don't have a choice, who we are underneath our thinking of, and all of that is a wonderful exploration, and it's somewhere that I love going, but just foundationally seeing the temporary nature of
Yeah.
thought and feelings and the fact that we resist what is like, it's like resisting the rain. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, it's raining. Oh, I don't want it to rain. Well, what if you just put your wellies on and a waterproof jacket and took a brolly out because
Right.
it won't last.
And that's the
Rest for
truth,
the
isn't it?
weather,
Yeah.
not resist it because there's nothing we can do about it. And we all want to live with more ease. And it's seen that the resistance causes a huge amount of the suffering
Yeah.
does loosen something.
Yeah. And that ease is always available, right? Because even in the midst of pain, there can be an experience of ease. And that sounds bonkers, but it's like you say about the weather, we don't try and change the weather. We know that that's ridiculous. So, we could just put our coat on, take an umbrella and step out of the house. Like, so yeah, so it can be raining and we can have a horrible experience, like, oh, I hate the rain. Or we can just go, okay, it's raining. What do I need? Oh, I
Mhm.
put my wellies on, put my coat on,
Yeah.
like there's ease. Okay, we might not like it, but there's no suffering, there's no struggle in there. And that, I just think that is beautiful when we start to see that, well, what if it's the same with the way that the human body operates, if you like? Like, you know, so this is here. There's anxiety here, there's sadness here, there's a toothache here. We can't do anything about it. It's here. Okay, it's going to go. And that kind of ease, that restfulness, that just like, okay, that, I hate the word acceptance, but people understand what that means. Then there's no suffering. It's like, oh, immediately.
Yeah, and anxiety is conceptual. It's a word that we've come up in the
Mm,
human race to describe something. But if you really was to like lay the word, if that was possible, on a table and then cut it to pieces, it would be something that's felt and some narrative with it and that whole loop. So all of that to me is just movement. All of that to me is experience, and it's always changing.
mm. So to finish, I would love you to just say, like, because we've been talking a long time, of course. But you came from like, some serious diagnoses of anxiety and
Mm,
panic and whatever. They're like not sort of minor things. And, obviously had some physical stuff going on as well. And you obviously mentioned the physical stuff.
mm.
Like, yeah, sometimes there's some niggles. It's okay. And I'm curious to like know like where's this thing called anxiety now? Like what's your kind of relationship, I guess, with that?
I think it's, like I said, it's a word, but
Mhm.
I notice there's sensations in my body and a mind that habitually likes to come in at times. and try and make sense of it.
Mm.
But I see it for what it is. Like, and not always. There's times if I'm really tired, I know that really I do need to rest. I'm a busy person. And so the difference is anxiety looked like my full experience all the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
I was waiting almost for the next thought to come in to derail me. That's what it felt like. As thoughts can derail me left, right, and center, I actually don't care because I know what thought is, I know what it's made
Mm.
up of. And so my experience day to day is really leaning into the absolute possibility that I can deal with things as they arise. And a lot of my anxiety was about the future. What could
Yeah, of
happen? What
course.
do I need to do about that? What do I need to do about this? And I just notice my attention and where it is. And I bring my attention when it's not necessarily where it should be back into what I'm doing at the moment.
Mm.
Um, and whether that's, well, a gazillion things that I do, but one of my favorite things at the moment to do is bake.
Mm.
And I enjoy baking because it means that I get some good stuff into my kids. I'm fascinated with nutrition and what we eat for our body mind. And it also means that I have to concentrate because I'm
Mm.
measuring and working things through. And there was there's some absolute amazingness in that because I spent so long actually just listening to podcasts wall to wall to try and get rid of my anxiety.
Mm.
And now I can see it's just part of being human,
Yeah.
but it isn't
Yeah.
my everything. And like you say, I don't identify with a diagnosis because how can you diagnose a feeling that's temporary?
Yeah.
Because even in myself, I could see I wasn't anxious all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
how can we really be diagnosed with something that is just describing something for a period of time? So I'm not so concerned, and maybe there's a place for diagnosis for some people,
Yeah.
again, not disregarding that. But I think and it's worth exploring in this
Yeah.
direction too, and then work it out for yourself because that's the amazing thing. We've all got wisdom and common sense, and you'll know what feels right for you.
Mm.
And my
Mm.
bet is if you're listening to this, then you're open to what's
Yes.
possible.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, thank you, Becca. It's been an amazing conversation. I've loved having you on.
Thank you
And
for
I'm
having me.
wondering, are you able to let people know how they would find out more about you? Obviously, I'll drop some links down below, but is there one particular place or, um, yeah, somewhere you'd like to point people?
I think the best place is my website, which is beccagardner.com. Like you say, you'll pop it in the show notes if you get the surname wrong. And then that really is the hub of everything I do. I have a podcast, as I've mentioned, The Thought Trap on Apple and Spotify. And I tend to work with people for a minimum of 3 months. I've just launched a program called Home, where we get to hang out for a whole 3 months. And we have weekly sessions and also bespoke support in between. So what I want to do is like I was held in between sessions too,
Yeah.
and it's just such an incredible and immersive experience. And through my experience of working with clients, I can see this is exactly what the world needs. And
Mm.
so explore that. But there's also lots of other ways you can kind of catch me on talks and various things. So yes, check out my website.
Lovely. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much. And I will catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Vicky. See you soon, I'm
Thank
sure.
you.
Bye.